Hello everybody and welcome to Cabaret Secrets. My name's Gary Williams and today I'm joined by pianist, writer and performer Michael Roulston. Time Out described his writing for one show as satire that mashes up Noel Coward, Jonathan Swift and the Hitler Youth. Michael, welcome to Cabaret Secrets.
Wow, that's a great introduction. I'm really pleased to be here and I'm very excited about your book, which I've read recently. And I kind of want to thank you. You know, I just think it's a most tremendous achievement. It's I've been doing this quite a long time. My first professional cabaret exploration was about 1996. And I just think this book is great for anybody that's been in the business a long time or is a newcomer to it. And for me, it's good for people who are working around singers as an MD. It gives an insight into what singers are having to go through. And, you know, I've been producing some of my own shows, but this is helpful on so many levels, especially... I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm excited.
No, it's very complimentary. I love it. You can just carry on all this as long as you like.
No, I'm very excited about the book. It's the first time that really something that is quite a lonely and singular occupation has been given a way of reflecting back and advising people who have to know every department. They have to be able to have an insight into, as you say in the book, lighting, sound, self-promotion, all these aspects that who else is going to teach you that? So it's a great thing. Well done.
Thank you very much. I'm surprised you even had time to read it because you work non-stop.
Yeah, I had a week's holiday this year, so that was a
How dare you?
Yeah, I know. But I had the most enormous Edinburgh Festival. I committed to doing 4 shows there. And
just playing it for 4 shows.
Yeah, playing
and performing.
Yeah, playing, performing, singing, writing. So 2 of them were comprised of songs that I'd written, and I work largely with 2 performers, Sara, Louise Young and Dusty Limits. And the other 2 were not songs that I'd written, but they're songs that I'd arranged, and they've all been picked up, and we're doing further performances.
When you say picked up, so it was Edinburgh was sort of a showcase for what you were doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a big trade fair. So Truly Madly Deeply was the kind of the flagship show, if you like.
This is with Sara Louise Young.
Sara Louise Young, yeah. And we're doing that for 6 weeks at the Trafalgar Studios as a result of being...
That's here in London.
Yeah. In their space, which used to be the Whitehall Theatre years ago. And then the other show I did with her, Songs for Cynics, we've done at the St. James Theatre. We've got a booking at the Crazy Coqs now, and so on. You know, it's the way to sort of have work seen, and then it spirals out from there.
No, everybody, as you know, you just reminded me that probably about 5 years ago, I was asking you for advice about Edinburgh. I've thought about doing Edinburgh for years, and I've loved it. I've gone almost every year for a long time. Love being there. And always think, I should be, if I'm here anyway, I ought to do a show here. Yeah. And then I start to look into it, and I see all of my peers out there in the pouring rain handing out flyers every day, and I think, oh God, would I really want to do that? And everybody tells me, well, if you're going to work in Edinburgh, you're going to lose a fortune, so just so you know.
Yeah.
And I think, well, do I, I'd probably just rather go on a cruise ship somewhere and so sunbathing, or working or do some corporate.
Yeah.
Does it only make sense to do Edinburgh if you are using it as a showcase to do other things, or is it good in itself?
Well, it's only more in the last few years I've become a little bit more business-minded about it. So now I think, okay, what do I want to get out of this? In the early days, it was just the fun of being up there, of being kind of in the hubbub of it all, and being able to network and meet people. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, is it going to be financially the best way to go forwards? And especially if you're doing it on a split with somebody, So
you've been sharing the money.
Yeah. So the new feature really of the festival is the free fringe.
I noticed this last time. This was being talked about a lot. Tell us what does that mean?
Well, it was interesting because last year they started the Toast Award, which is a cabaret award for Time Out and Soho Theatre, and 4 of the 6 nominees were all on the free fringe.
Wow.
So rather than it being kind of the low end of the market, it's actually a more workable financial model, and you have the possibility of having a smaller risk because you're not paying for the venue. I mean, it is at the end.
So it's free both ways, because I thought it just meant free in that there's no ticket price and you go around with your begging bowl afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
But it also means that you're not paying. I mean, how's everybody making money?
Well, all the venues, they tend to have a bar. It tends to be part of a pub. So, yes, in a way, it is glamorous busking. But there are some really fantastic venues, and it's a really growing area.
So it's really just the venues that have an opportunity to make some money from drinks as well.
Yeah.
The venues, like a normal regular theatre that doesn't have a bar, they perhaps wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But any venue with a bar would do. They're going to make money from the bar, and so you finish your performance. And how does it ever feel a little bit beneath you to stand with a does it feel like that really, or do you quickly get used to it?
It's sort of fine. We write the bucket into the show. We have. We wrote a song that goes at the end that's about collecting money, and there's a very particular kind of response you get where some people give, they're happy to put money in your hand because they know it's going straight to you and not via 4 other people. And so it inclines some people to be actually more generous than just the price of a regular ticket. So, we say, if you put in X amount, then we'll give you our CD as well. If you put in...
Tell us the X, so it's interesting.
Well, in this situation, we made our CD relatively cheaply. I don't mean to say that musically it was cheap, but we had a simple CD made, and we were able to say, okay, if you put £10 in, you'll get a CD. And it becomes a good way of meeting people, making a transaction, gathering email addresses, really building up a client base, a mailing list. And then, as Dusty Limit says, if you put £5 in, you'll get a firm handshake. If you put 10 in, you'll get a peck on the cheek. And for 20, just come backstage, and it won't take long.
But that's a really nice way to do it with humour, isn't it?
Yeah,
because then it's not saying, please, in an earnest way at the end of the show, it's very important that we, you give us some money because it's the only way. If you do it with humour, then people are much more inclined.
Yeah, I mean, I accept that some people would regard the Free Fringe as being somehow... A cheap sort of art form, but actually you're guaranteed an audience, and you'll probably get 2 or 3 times as many people coming in as you would if you had a paid ticket.
I'm interested in that because I would have thought, I mean, I've been to Edinburgh before and I've been offered, everyone's always saying, oh, come to this thing, it's free, and they're giving you flyers. And the flyers look all right, and the guy looks all right, and I think, well, it's free, so it probably might not be very good. I'd probably rather pay a tenner and go to something that's... But that attitude must be changing now as more good things are free and people are learning that. Yeah.
There is some terrible stuff on the Free Fringe, but then there's some terrible stuff on the paid Fringe, and it really goes both ways. So people are looking for recommendations, and we've been doing Edinburgh a long time now. Sara Louise has been up there with our songs for like the last 5 years, so she's built up a following, and people will look for her in the brochure, and that's why it works for us.
Do you need to employ a publicist while you're there?
Yeah. I mean, you can do that yourself, but Sarah's pretty on the ball, and Dusty as well. So we haven't used it for those shows this year. But yeah, we definitely, in the Free Fringe you bring your own staff. So we hired a brilliant guy, Alex Hall, who did all our sound and lights for us, and do it that way.
And will you be going back, or do you think you've done it now?
Oh gosh, no. There's so much more to do. I mean, every new thing we write, we're working on a musical now, and this year I want to make a CD with Dusty, so we'll be back to promote that, I'm sure.
What's the best way for people to make a start? Would you say, if they want to go to Edinburgh, and they're vaguely familiar with what it's all about, where do they go to find a venue, or who do you contact, and what should they be? What kind of show seems to work best in Edinburgh for a vocalist? I'm talking.
Yeah, if in the cabaret section. Yeah. Well, it's important to bear in mind that the cabaret section is really new, and Sara Louise was one of the people that formed a petition to introduce this, because there wasn't a cabaret section before, and so you were either in comedy or music, and so it's only a couple of years old.
Yeah. What if I sing funny songs?
Yeah. It's true, and now what she and others did was they went round to everybody who she thought they might fit into a cabaret section, and asked them if they'd like to be on the list, and there it was. So now it's a growing section, and we have, I don't know, 4 or 6 pages of the brochure now. It's super, you know, and.
So is there a central organisation that people should contact if they want to make a start and think, well, I want to do Edinburgh next year, who do I call?
Well, you know, you need a good show reel, as your book says, you know. You need to have a bit of a pedigree, or just show what you feel might be relevant, and then contact the venues directly, or if you're working with a producer, then they will do that for you, you know.
So it's a good idea to, if you go to the festival and get the book and you see things which are similar to what you might be doing, and so you want to think, well, those venues are obviously it obviously works to have that kind of thing in those venues, so they're the people that I'll contact.
Yeah, you've got to know the venues, you've got to have done a bit of research, you've got to sort of have an idea of what's going to be right for you, and be realistic about what size of audience you're likely to attract.
And is it necessary for everybody do we have to be out there every day flyering and drumming up business?
Well, it depends what budget level you're working on. You can pay people to do that for you. We found the best way was to target flyer specific shows. So we would go to the other venues where other shows where there was music comedy playing, and exit flyer that crowd. You know, and we found that just kind of being quite specific was much stronger than being on the Royal Mile and just handing out randomly.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, it just takes a bit of know-how and learning from other people, really. And
any big no-nos that you've learned over the years?
Wow. I'm not sure what to say to that.
This is Cabaret Secrets, so I need a couple of secrets from you.
Yeah.
I mean, other things which things which you see that people, common mistakes that people make, and you think, God, we'll never do that again. I mean, actually, what you've just said, the way your flyer is I think, a fantastic piece of advice. That's really working smarter and not harder, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that in itself, that's one of those tiny things that could save people an awful lot of time and an awful lot of effort, just that one sentence. But any things which you see, regular mistakes that people make?
You know, I've seen people bring up entire sets and expect very extensive lighting rigs and very complicated sound things. And you have to bear in mind, there's a fringe element to it. Your show has to be able to stand up and work just in a storytelling sense with a minimal amount of, say, just 8 lights. 2 or 3 lighting states, perhaps, you know. And, you know, of course, some venues are more geared up, but you may only have, like on the ships, you may only have a couple of hours to tech it, and you really have to be able to work within those parameters, you know, and just kind of go, okay, this is the essence of my show, and I'm going to leave the chaise longue and, and all the other stuff at home, because it's not about that.
It's stripped down, isn't it? And as few people as possible on stage as well, because the more people there are, the more people have got to be paid.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, it really comes often down to, can I afford to bring a pianist, you know? When we did the Cabaret Horse shows, we created them to work with backing tracks, you know, and these were really bespoke and they fitted around her really well, and they gave us lots of opportunity to make different colours. So there was like Bjork style electronica, and there was kind of heavy rock, and then there was kind of jazzy big band stuff, and it allowed us to make a lot of different sounds. And it allowed Sara Louise to really just turn up in every open mic spot that was going, every little pocket she could find to appear and promote the show, and that really drew an audience in. And that was a lot more flexible than having a pianist lugging a keyboard and doing that with her. But we've now got evolved to a place where we're much more interested in doing live stuff, which is why we created the Songs for Cynics show, and it's her and I in a very traditional format, live on stage, bantering and singing together, you know.
It's interesting that you, as a pianist, created the backing tracks that put you, the pianist, out of a job. It's a good job it wasn't that successful.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, that you can hear me virtually around town, all over, playing for different people. I've sat in audiences and I've sort of thought, a performer's come on, and I thought, that really sounds like me playing, and it's a really very odd out-of-body experience. Yeah.
And you're wondering, should I be getting paid a few quid for sitting here listening to this?
Yes, I would recommend other pianists to be very canny about what arrangement they make with the people they accompany.
One of the things I struggle with a lot in the book, and anybody that listens to these podcasts regularly will know what I'm going to say, and that was defining a cabaret. And particularly, it's interesting talking to you because I decided to go with what I know, which is a sort of traditional, a singer with a band, a great American songbook sort of thing, because that's what I do. And also geared a little bit in the book to the ships. But I was trying to, at the same time, acknowledge that there are lots of other forms of cabaret, but the book would have gone on, and I've thought about it since, and maybe I will do on the new edition of the book, which I'm working on now, that there'll be more sections to deal with more cabaret on the alternate scene, because it's a huge scene out there, isn't it, and very difficult to define.
It is. Yeah, I do quite a lot of work in what I would call the variety scene. So these tend to be mixed bills of acts doing up to 10 minutes each, and maybe I'd be the musical director for the evening, and I would be accompanying the host, and perhaps managing a band, and we would be the sort of the format that the acts sit into. And so, for example, the Black Cat Cabaret, we've been doing this every Friday at the Café de Paris, and I've been composing for that show and being the accompanist and working with Dusty Limits to create the sort of the shape of the show. Also, David Harris and Vicky Butterfly, the producer and designer. It's interesting I was thinking about this a lot, reading a book and the journey I made. I suppose in my youth, I grew up in the 70s with variety shows on television, performing to live studio audiences. It really, even one of my heroes would have been Paul Daniels, because I was fascinated with that live connection. And then all through college, I love light entertainment. I was fascinated by that. And then in my 20s, I sort of had a few bad brushes with what I'd call American-style cabaret, and I felt kind of I felt an insincerity. Maybe I saw some bad stuff, But I was very interested in satirical cabaret, in queer cabaret that really kind of was very individualistic, that made a stand on stage and said, "This is me and all my weirdness, and this is what I'm interested in." So to this day, I find people like Justin Bond really exciting. I still find that kind of very personal cabaret useful. But then things kind of got switched around. One of the big jobs I had after college was working for a company called Time of Our Lives Theatre. And we were out on the road 12 shows a week, and we would do a venue for older people in the daytime, which could have been a club, a social club like you've talked about in your book. It could have been a place where older people hang out, and then we would go out and do a village hall in the evenings. And this really kind of made me and broke me. All those stories that you tell in your book made me howl, because I recognize those things where, I've had to perform, in a room for 12 people, strip lighting, with the keyboard perched on the television, and you just have to make it work. And so people talk about cutting your teeth, and that was really very useful to me that time. It made me very fearless about connecting to an audience, looking in their eye, asking them a question, going into a place where it was slightly unknown between how it would work out, And so I'm game for anything on stage in that way. It was really powerful. I did a double act for 5 years with a guy called Peter Tennant, and we were doing that round the cabaret circuit and the gay cabaret circuit, sort of following on the heels of drag queens, even though we weren't doing drag ourselves. And that was very exciting, and a bit more kind of a bit more rowdy. And then I started forming work where I was making my own work, which was really exciting. I started writing songs with people. And that sort of really kind of set up the last few years for me now, that I've been really focusing on being a writer and trying to create as many different sort of interesting cabaret forms within original writing as possible.
But is there anything throughout, you've done this whole range of work with all sorts of different people, is there anything that connects all of them, that makes all of them cabaret? I mean, what is it that makes cabaret cabaret?
Okay. I think it has to be about something that's spontaneous and live that's happening in the room. That the audience has to feel that this is going on in a way that hasn't happened every night. You know, as you said, some of that comes out of a lot of experience and practice, but some of it also comes out of an ability to ride the moment, be spontaneous, pick up something that they give you. You know, if you invite an audience to give you something, they will give you something, you know. And, you know, some people, you know, like Dusty, he'll create drama he'll create a connection with the audience out of being provocative. And some audiences really thrive on that, and they'll give you a lot to play with. And then other audiences just like to be charmed, and they'll be very responsive. You know, the show that we're touring at the moment, Julie Madly Deeply, is a strange mixture of being a play and cabaret, in that there are definitely sections where the audience understand that they're listening and they're receiving, you know, that it's slightly more passive. And then there are sections where she goes out into them and really wrangles them and says, you know, anybody got any booze? Are you enjoying the show? What's going on? And becomes, we've tried to really balance the two art forms in one show. So I think it's quite an original concept.
But people must be, if people go along expecting it to be a sort of a passive cabaret experience, and then she comes out asking for some booze, then some of them must be quite alarmed.
Yeah, but some audiences are more confident, you know, if they've sort of galvanized, if you've brought them together, you've warmed them up well, they're connected, they're happy, and they're feeling safe, then you can go anywhere.
It is about the performers, isn't it? About creating that right environment, because once you get out there, it's up to you. I mean, sometimes the odds are against us, depending on where we are and the day of the week and the mood the crowd's in.
Yeah.
But it's really up to us to try and set everything up to make them feel comfortable, and so that we can then take them where we want to go. And if we do it right, I think the responses that we get are often, it's not quite as unpredictable as it might seem.
Yeah. I mean, once you've sort of, once you've done sort of 500 shows, you know how you want to be on stage. You know what performers talk about their clown. You know, and it's sort of an interesting idea that, you know, you find that you have a certain persona that works for you on stage, a certain way of being with the audience, and a certain kind of way of reacting to things. And if once you're sure of that, then they're sure of where you're going to go, and the kind of things you're going to introduce them to. That all sounds very vague, but I'm sort of talking about all the people I work with, you know. So, you know, there are some pretty sort of dangerous performers out there. I did a run at the Soho Theatre with David Hoyle, and I would say that his performance art is exhilarating. You know, he takes risks. He is challenging to the audience, and he questions. You know, he's deeply aggressive as a satirist. But on the other hand, his 50% is charm. It's welcoming them in and bringing them to him. So and I can feel him balancing the two things. It's quite thrilling.
You must sit there as an accompanist and learn so much just by watching these people. I know often you're very much a part of the show as well, depending on what you do. But certainly the times where you're just playing the piano, you've got time and space to look around and really absorb the technique and the craft that the artist is using.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the people I work with, we form relationships that where we'll discuss the musical choices, but we'll also be they often allow me to reflect back to them what I feel has been going on during the gig, and we'll talk about what felt right, what was a good punctuation in the show, what sort of died, and maybe if we move the running order around, this will work better. So it's quite. I feel very privileged to be allowed that sometimes.
And I mean, they're lucky to have that from you, because you've just, by the nature of where you're sitting, have seen probably more cabaret than most directors have.
Yeah, I think. There's a certain kind of anxiety going on in a performer's head a lot of the time, and to be on stage with somebody and to be in the show but outside that is a different way of seeing the same situation. You know.
Yeah, but are there things which you take away from other people's performances and think, oh, I'm definitely going to use that? I don't mean, there's a bit in the book I say, thou shalt not steal. You know, we don't want to nick anything. But are you? Does it make you more brave in your own performance or your own writing, seeing what other people can get away with, or where other people go?
I'm trying to think of a specific example. This year with Dusty in our show Psycho, we write pretty verbose, elaborate rhyme schemes together. I mean, we encourage each other to kind of go as far as possible, and he definitely writes sort of in a Noel Coward style for his comedy songs. So this year we wrote a song, and it had quite an elaborate verse, and then the chorus consisted of one word, and it's a word I'm not going to say live on air, but it was for comic relief, definitely, and we wouldn't have done that probably 2 years ago. I think we are pushing ourselves. We're trying to find more fun ways to be.
When you find something that works, and you seem to be doing lots of different things and writing new things and challenging yourselves and your audiences, it must be really hard for you to drop material that you know works very well in favour of something that is new and risky and might work just as well but might not.
Yeah. I mean, this year with Psycho, it was very interesting. You know, it was the first year Dusty and I had presented a show that was all our own writing instead of relying on covers, you know, and that was a big leap into the unknown, because so often people want a bit of the familiar, that, people often say to me, "Oh, will people know these songs?" And I'm like, I can't speak for people. You know, I have no idea anymore. I've sort of found myself in quite a little clique in a way, and so you could say, well, okay, everybody knows Gershwin, or do they? You know, I mean, this music is all aging, and what does anybody know anymore? When I was doing those old people's venues I was talking about earlier, you know, rather than it being the music of the 20s and 30s, we were doing a lot of the music of the 60s, because it was a different era, you know, and the idea of what, you know, people in older people's venues are listening to, or were listening to, the music that they grew up with, evolves, it changes. And we would often joke about what we would be being played back to, you know, when we're in our old folks' homes, what are people going to come and sing to us, you know, and how that might be. But the stakes for me, for example, with me and Dusty and Sara Louise, are to improve in our writing. So if we feel that we've got a better, stronger set of songs, then we feel like we've moved forwards. And yeah, I mean, you know, somebody might come to us and say, oh, you know, I mean, the year before last, Dusty and I did a best of, but you can't do a best of every year. Do you know what I mean?
And even better off.
Yeah, and in Edinburgh, I mean, it's funny that we're sort of really focusing on Edinburgh, but in a way it's where we take our new stuff to show. So we there's no point going back with something that's old. You know, it's about us creating new material, and you know, and it's the same for the stand-ups. You know, they write a new show, you know, and you might think of the title and the text to go in the program way before you've written the show.
Yes,
you know?
Yes. Like for us, sometimes I'll have the artwork first.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make a show. But you're right that we talked before about it's very hard for anybody to make money in Edinburgh. But that's all right, because there are different reasons for working, and sometimes it's money. You do a corporate somewhere to a rowdy, horrible crowd, but they're going to pay you a fortune and fly you to Geneva to do it. So thank you very much. I don't care how awful the gig is. I'm just going to pay a lot of money. Or you're schlepping up to Edinburgh. You're not earning very much money. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a showcase, and it's a place that you can try out new material, which you can then take elsewhere. So there are reasons for doing gigs other than money.
Yeah. Your book. It's very right in that way. What I liked about your book is that you talk about, let's be businesslike about this. You know, if you want to work, here's where the work is. Let's get on with it, kind of attitude. And I think that's really terrific. I like working really hard. I'm a workaholic. I just love it. And I it takes a lot for me to take a holiday. But in terms of business, making money, it was interesting this year. We made the CD, and if you make your CD in a canny way, financially, you can really increase your revenue. On a sort of a sidebar, like 3 years ago, the penny dropped for me. I wanted to make all this music. I wanted to write innovative, quirky, personal songs. And I realized that, not everybody in terms of a majority audience is going to want to see that and pay for that. And I'm realistic about that. So I sort of diversified in that I created Dapper Dudes. And Dapper Dudes is an outfit with Tom Mancy, a bass player. And that's the project that is probably a bit more closer to what you talk about in Cabaret Secrets, in that we do the weddings, we do the private parties, we do the corporate entertainment. And it's not that I care about that project any less, or that it's in any way less artistic for me. I get great pleasure out of performing at a wedding and giving real satisfaction because it's what they want. Mm. It's the right thing for the right moment, And so the Dapper Dude stuff, that really helps to pay for the more avant-garde stuff that I do, the stuff that doesn't have such a major, such a big demographic.
It's nice to hear you say that. For me, the equivalent is the ships, and doing the ships allows me to be more indulgent with recordings or working in small venues. That gives me the complete freedom to say yes or no to things on land, because I'm paying my mortgage by working on the ships. And it's not to say that I don't enjoy the ships, because I absolutely love it on many levels, and it's always a great challenge artistically as well, to put together a show that works on cruise ships. It was a great challenge performing to different nationalities and so on. Yeah. But it also, as I say, it affords me the ability to indulge myself a little bit more creatively on land.
Yeah, absolutely. When I left school, I was always told you need to have something to fall back on, and I was like, yeah, it'll be fine, But because of the choices,
they meant a physics degree.
Yeah.
You thought you've made it weddings.
Well, because of the choices I've made, I didn't pursue conducting in the West End. I always liked being on stage. I always liked being the pianist that was part of the action. I've made that choice. I haven't really done cruise ships, only because I've spent a lot of time on the road on land, and it's not so interesting for me at the moment to be away a lot. I like being at home, and I'm not saying never, but that's just how it's been for me. I've been in the back of a van doing small-scale touring so much that if I can... And also, when I was doing that touring, I was out of London, so I wasn't building a profile here. So now I'm really trying to... be here as much as possible.
But I like that you don't have any sort of snobbery. I mean, you are very well known and very well respected in the sort of avant-garde cabaret field, but it's great that you're very happy to talk about the work that you do at weddings, and you'd be very happy potentially to go on cruise ships one day, because there are some people that do turn their noses up at some of this other kind of work and think that they shouldn't be doing it, and I think they're missing out on an opportunity.
Absolutely. The work I mentioned earlier at the beginning, where we were going out to village halls, we were really off the map in terms of legitimate theatre, really, But the work we were doing really always felt worthwhile. We had the most extraordinary actions, I'm sure you've had the same things, where somebody comes up to you and says, I've been in a state of depression for 2 years, and this is the first time I've laughed. So, that was meaningful and powerful and very... humbling, actually. If my work, makes people uplifted, happy, moved, anything, then it doesn't matter what style it's in,
How concerned are you and the people that you work with, Sara, Louise Young and Dusty Limbs, for example, when you're putting a show together, are you thinking, have you always got an eye on the commerciality of it? Are you thinking, well, it's important that we have a good snappy title, or it's important that we don't get too indulgent here? Or do you just let your creativity flow and think, well, if it's quality, if we think it's good, they'll come?
I think the results kind of tend to come out of your personality and what you like to put on stage. I would say of the two of them, Dusty is slightly more edgy. He will take more risks and be more confrontational. But he also likes to please and charm an audience. You know, you're never very far away from. I should answer your question.
That's good. It's good. Carry on.
We do definitely, because at the end of the day, there's no fourth wall. There's no, you've got to be on stage, and if you're going to be up there for 2 hours, there's no point creating a show that alienates the audience from beginning to end. You've got to give them a mixture. You can't. They've got to be in a state at the end of it where they kind of go, well, that blew my mind, but I really want to meet this person. I really want to go and have a drink with this person. I really want to find out more. I want to come back and see another show. All those things. You've got to. Yeah, it depends on your personality as well. Like I was talking about the idea of your clown. It depends what you can pull off. I know that I've never been. I've always been one for gooning around and being daft and being a lighter kind of performer. It doesn't work for me to do some of the really dangerous stuff that other people do. I just I can't pull it off. Charm has always been my main tool, whereas other people, they can be outrageous and people go with it.
Do you think the title makes a big difference? I'm thinking more in terms of getting them in. You were just talking about sort of once they're there and sending them away happy. But for me, the challenge is always just getting them through the door in the first place. And sometimes, the title, I think, seems to be quite key.
Yeah, it's something we really have been thinking about a lot harder now. If you want to increase your audience, you've got to get them in the room first. If you give them sort of challenging stuff once you're in there, fine. But you've got to just get them through the door. So that means your title and your image, your poster image, what you put on your poster. It's good to just pay out for a quality image. Just get a good idea, get it well seen to, in terms of graphic design. Don't hold back on that. You've got to look like you're... something you said in your book, something you said about creating a world of your ideas, developing that, and that takes a few goes to really find that. With Dusty's show this year, it was interesting. We changed poster image at one point.
During the run?
Well, it was kind of in the run-up to the publicity. He had an image that was him having been, in a fight, having been beaten up, but sort of made up on one side of his face, and then kind of punched about on the other side of his face. And it was quite bracing. It was really exciting. But I was like, actually, this is quite disturbing to look at. So then we settled on, this is for the show Psycho, we settled on one. He got another image done where it was him fully made up. And then there was like a crack down the side of his face, as though it was the image, the mask was fractured, and it was much more appealing. It was his handsome face, and then this sort of fault line going through it, and it worked much better. People were attracted by the flyer. It's about attracting people as well.
There's a thing we call the marquee value, and that's, if you talk about hiring, if I'm going to hire Michael Roulston to work with me at Crazy Cox in a new show, well, does Michael have any marquee value?
Right,
if people see the name Michael Roulston on a poster, is that in itself going to bring people in? So when you're hiring, if you're spending tens of thousands of pounds a night on a major star, are they going to? Is that investment going to come back in terms of ticket sales? And there are very few people that have marquee value. And in our business, there are people that have it, but being able to afford them is usually a different matter. And that's why for the shows that I've done, it's always been the name of the show that actually has the marquee value. And it's an annoying challenge. When I first started, of course, nobody knows who Gary Williams is, but everybody knows who Frank Sinatra is, say. So having, we edited a show called The Legend of Sinatra, which would be in big letters, and then underneath in small letters, nobody really cares where, it's sort of with Gary Williams and his band, because that's not why they're coming. Now, there are certain places I can go that people do know me a little bit, but it's small. And in those places, I can I don't have to worry too much about the hook. I don't have to worry too much about the title, because having a title can be very restrictive. You know, it's like
there's a big fashion for hanging your show on the fame of somebody who's gone before. And
guilty.
Yeah, and I used to be really down on all that. You know, I used to think, you know, you should be writing your own material, and you know, I was maybe a bit naive and you know, a bit too revolutionary about it. You know, it really, you know, at the end of the day, not everybody wants to be a writer or is interested in that. It's not their bag. And there's some fabulous music, and I love Nat King Cole, and when I do Dapper Dudes, I sing Nat King Cole, and you know, everybody loves to hear it, and I get a great pleasure out of singing it. So you know, it would be really hypocritical of me. And secondly, we just created a show about Julie Andrews, so you know,
you're right. But that you must, and so that's called Julie Madly Deeply.
That's right.
And great title.
Yeah.
I've seen the artwork. It looks terrific. Now, let me ask you, do you think that title and that artwork and that whole concept just in itself is helping to bring more people through the door?
We hope so.
Well, I know you're doing great business with that show, so...
Our motives weren't entirely callous. You know, we wanted to create a show about her. We found her really fascinating, and we wanted to work within our style, which is cabaret.
Yeah.
So what we've created, with the help of Russell Lucas, our deviser and director, as I said before, is this mixture of being a play and a cabaret. And we tried to really make it a show that we would be happy for her to see, that was respectful to her, and that was also kind of on our terms. We didn't want to just kind of make something that was all about the past tense. And then she did this, and she won this award, and then she made this film, and then we're going to sing this song. Yeah. So we've tried to make something...
Boring.
Yeah, well...
It is a bit...
it's a starting point.
This Nat Cole thing, that is the starting point, and I'm really, as I'm putting the thing together, I'm really trying to actually do just what you've said, and that put it actually in my terms, present it in my terms, rather than just being this sort of history lesson.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what you think about if you saw Julie Madly Deeply. We've tried to take opportunities to change the storytelling style to make it something that's happening in the room. So, for example, there's a section of her life in her teens which we contract down to being done in the style of a horse race announcer doing a commentary. Right. And so there's this galloping excitement, and you know, it's like the two horses in the race are Julie Andrews and Petula Clark, you know, and then there's low self-esteem coming up on the inside, low self-esteem coming, you know, and to try and find other ways of making it primary, something that happens in the room that is not just about something that's reported, you know.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was interesting because in the research for it, we went to see another show of somebody performing her material, and she was beautifully well researched, and she had a voice of an angel, and it was a terrific show. It just wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to try and make something that was a piece of theatre. You know, you foster an audience that is interested in what you're doing. So if you're interested in new writing, then you foster an audience that is interested in following that. If your thing is Nat King Cole or Shirley Bassey or whatever, then you will build an audience on that strand, you know, and I've never really kind of mixed across the streams, as they say in Ghostbusters. You know, it's always been very separate projects that I sort of have different hats on for. Julie Madly Deeply, yes, we wanted to create a show that would have a broader appeal. And it's worked, you know, that we are doing a national tour, we are doing a West End run, and we're hoping that this will in turn rub off and introduce audiences to our other work. But we don't try and sell our CD for our kind of edgy comedy songs at the Julie Madly Deeply gigs.
Did you join the Julie Andrews show? Man, here's a CD of Cabaret Whore.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
You so much.
Yeah. It doesn't. They're different strands, but hopefully there will be a Venn diagram where a portion of that audience crosses over, you know. Yeah. And maybe what we'll do is we'll be able to go back to venues where we've introduced ourselves with Songs for Cynics, you know, with the other show. This is the change I was talking about a few years ago, where I suddenly started to think about what I was creating as being products, and and you kind of go, okay, maybe 1,000 people want this product, but maybe 10,000 people want this product. So with Dapper Dudes, you know, I polish that, I make it as good as I possibly can, I try and improve what I do, and I know that there's a bigger there's a bigger amount of people who are prepared to pay more money for it than the other. But the other I find really fulfilling and feeds me and nourishes me and makes me feel like I'm doing something that that realizes myself. That I'm becoming that I develop myself at the same time. So it's you've got to, if your book spells it out really well. If you want to make money, then you've got to put yourself in the area of business where that money is available and where people are prepared to pay for it. There's no point. You've got to develop that business sense, and not expect an agent or anybody else to do that for you.
It's really, I think, all the time I'm thinking to myself, everything I do is about balance. I like to be indulgent and work with some new material and do some, for me anyway, slightly edgy things, but I also like singing Sweet Caroline on a cruise ship, waving my arms in the air, and I need to do both. One to help pays the mortgage, and the other helps to keep me happy artistically. And I think I think it's always good to do a little bit of everything and not to get too focused on any one thing.
Yeah, it's not that the commercial work for me is fickle or false in any way. I just I enjoy it, and I enjoy giving it equally. It's just it just has a different value in the marketplace.
Do you tweet?
Oh yeah, and this is a great part of your book. I don't know anybody else that's talked about social media in this way, and who knows what revisions you'll need to make in 10 years' time to the book. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Where things will be is very exciting. I do tweet at Michael Roulston, plain and simple, and I Facebook, and I've got pages, and I've become more serious about that. The more I need to draw an audience, then you've got to have got all that in place.
Does it draw an audience? Are we all just assuming? Is it the king's new clothes?
I have my doubts about it, yeah. But if you don't do it, then
this is the we're all doing it, but we don't know if there's any point.
Man, it's Marcus Reeves. I work with a rather brilliant musician called Marcus Reeves, and he's kind of king of this. He's really researched it. He's one of these people that kind of knows that, okay, if you want something from people, you've got to give them something. So you offer a free download of a track for them to sign to your mailing list. You have all these mechanisms, and you tweet at these sort of times of the day, and you try and sort of be really good at it. And I think I'm like you. I'm of the generation that didn't have it and now has it. And there will be people coming up behind us who are really very canny about this, and probably people who will do degrees in it in the future.
Oh my God, yeah.
So
I think they're doing it now, Michael.
Yeah, maybe they are. Well, I don't know. Marcus said that he had a conversation with David McAlmont, and he said of the thousands of fans that have given him likes, there are about 50 people that really bought everything, listened to everything, responded to everything, and I suppose you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to draw 10,000 likes in order to find that few hundred people who are really going to be devoted fans. And if somebody likes you, and then you've got to you don't just kind of go, oh great, I've got 10,000 likes. You've got to actually reply back to them, say, thanks for liking me, where did you see me, what are you interested in, try and make a connection with them. And
we can't just live in a little bubble, can we? We can't just sort of go out, and the only time we're seen is when we're working on stage and then sort of go away. It's all about constant engagement with people, isn't it? Which is quite exciting for us as well as them.
Yeah, there's nothing quite. I mean, I go back to the Free Fringe. Standing there at the end of the shows, shaking hands with people, being introduced. Often people would say, I really enjoyed your show, or here's my business card, I'd love to, you to come and do a gig for me, or whatever it is. All these different ways of connecting. That's all really important. But there's nothing like getting an email into your in tray that is addressed to you personally, that says, Dear Michael, this is what I've got going on. I hope you'll be interested in some of these projects, and I'm much more likely to flick through that, a nice, well-presented MailChimp HTML then something. I mean, I've turned off Facebook invites. You know, I don't get an email for every invitation I get. It's just too much.
Yeah, I've struggled. Just right now, I'm in the middle of a Facebook trauma because I had my normal Facebook account, and then I started my Facebook fan page, but I know there are people that keep finding me to make friends with me on my normal account, but they're not friends primarily. They're fans primarily. But they found my normal account rather than my page. So I had this policy a while ago. I thought I just want actual friends, my friends, to be on my account. So real friends, not 900 people I've never met before. I want the sort of 50 people that are my actual friends, and then everybody else can go on the fan. But I can't, I can't say, oh, hello, you've asked to be my friend, but I'm going to say no. Can you just like my fan page? I can't do that.
No fan or nobody that hears your music and likes your music really wants to be told, you're not a friend of mine, you're a fan, and that's where you're going to go into this pile, It's a terrible thing,
It is, isn't it?
So,
you see my predicament.
I do, yeah. And sometimes you have people from, I'm sure, particularly you, more than me, have people from overseas who you've never met, and maybe they've just heard a track online somewhere, but they're interested in what you're doing, and of course I want to encourage that, and I hope that if I ever went to perform in that town, that it would be I'd be able to let them know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'm promoting a gig, and I'm thinking, right, where do I post this exactly? Do I post it 4 times? Do I do it on all these different pages? And Sarah, I have my own page. Sara and I have a page together. I have my own account, and it's just a mess. I have no idea.
Thank you so much for all of your words of wisdom and sharing some of your Cabaret Secrets with us.
It's a great pleasure to be here. I feel very honoured to be invited to speak to you, and I wish your book the best of luck. It's really a great piece of work, and I think it's everybody in Cabaret should be reading this. It's really super.
Thank you for listening to this Cabaret Secrets podcast. If you've got any comments or questions, please visit cabaretsecrets.com, where you'll also find details of the Cabaret Secrets book, an indispensable guide on how to create your own show, travel the world, and get paid to do what you love.